Sometimes, in the depths of the internet, we stumble upon things that seem unremarkable at first glance, but after deeper consideration turn out to be exceptionally intriguing, unsettling, and sometimes even dangerous. One such case is the story of the mysterious website Horselaugh.com. At first glance, it's just an ordinary address that went unnoticed for years, but everything changed when the case caught the attention of Reddit's amateur detectives. Their curiosity couldn't withstand the endless questions surrounding the site, all because of a simple fact. Apart from random, seemingly meaningless files, you could also find the strangest texts and theories about autism and its connection to the H. pylori bacterium, as well as references to spirituality and certain radical faith cults. And even though it all seemed pretty coherent upon analysis, full of specific leads and even names, the deeper you went, the more questions arose. Enjoy the video. In mid-2023, weird posts appeared on r/InternetMysteries and r/Weird Websites subreddits, communities that gather mostly weird and often pretty disturbing internet phenomenons. And they informed users about the existence of a pretty niche website named Horselaugh.com. The site was plain and simple and looked like a basic file directory, much like some family archive. Users noticed that the directory appeared very old, perhaps even abandoned, yet it contained some newer files, for example from 2023. In one of the folders titled 1417BR Orbs, there were short video recordings from a camera pointed at someone lying in the bed. Strange in itself, but even stranger was that this room had no furniture at all. The room seemed empty. Additionally, from time to time, some mysterious figure peeked into the room. The lack of context or any explanation, and the simple fact that these files were publicly accessible on the server for anyone to view only multiplied the questions that arose. From the very beginning, the main goal was to somehow figure out who was the exact owner of this weird domain. And that is often quite simple. To find the owner of a given address, the Whois protocol usually suffices. It turned out that Horselaugh was linked to a man named Dan Jud. In the past, based on Wayback Machine archives, the site contained various folders with private materials, from family vacation photos to different blog entries and even strange documents studying the relationship between gut bacteria and the development of autism. All of this was hidden under the catalog called ASD Index. There one could find a quasi-scientific document allegedly proving that Helicobacter pylori causes both stomach problems and the development of autism symptoms. Here is the content of the document. History. Autistic children who are started on antibiotic regimen of whatever sort report marked improvements in language, behavior, and cognizance. In most cases, those subjects revert to former behavior within 2 weeks of stopping the antibiotic. Prior to Marshall's discoveries, adult ulcer sufferers simply drank milk and ate strawberries, two most common treatments. Strawberries and milk/cheeses have long been used to alleviate symptoms of ulcers. All of the adult ulcer sufferers tested for allergens were positive for wheat and corn, among others. After those adult sufferers were made aware of Marshall's discovery, all of those treated lost their allergies to wheat and corn within 1 year. Some within 2 weeks, some up to 1 year, but 100% were allergy-free within 1 year. Current status. The rate of children developing ASD is 1 per 91. In 1996, that was 1 in 1918. The estimated number of the population currently positive for H. pylori is 1 in 31. The rate of children of engineers developing ASD is 1 per 55. The number one occupation for ulcers is engineer. Symptomatic commonalities. Most autistic children display frequent symptoms of stomach pain. Often this is relieved by drinking milk or some sort of bismuth. Most autistic children are allergic to wheat and corn. From what I can tell, this number is 100% of those tested. Molecular commonalities. The dominant protein in H. pylori is almost identical structurally to that in wheat and corn. The dominant protein in H. pylori is almost identical structurally to that in blastocysts. The dominant protein in H. pylori is almost identical structurally to that necessary to the brain to form synaptic connections. And you can probably guess that most of this talk is bullshit. It's nonsense and has nothing to do with real science. And correlation doesn't mean causation. Yet it's not the end of this convoluted story, it's only its humble beginning. Thanks to metadata contained in the video files from the site, internet detectives discovered that the recordings had likely not been manually edited, and they came straight from a camera automatically dividing the footage into 1-minute segments. The date and time embedded in the image matched the file modification times. Altogether, there were a few short videos labeled with numbers like 30, 31, and 32 and so on, which then suddenly jumped. For example, 33 and then 49. It's quite possible then that some parts are missing, suggesting they were either deliberately removed or never uploaded to the server in the first place. In any case, no one but the site owner could know why these recordings ended up in a public directory on Horselaugh.com. The next step for amateur investigators, as well as YouTubers working on this case, was trying to contact Dan himself, the server's owner. According to user Scar's Theater, that I really invite you to watch, according to him, Dan became very aggressive when asked about his site. He was unwilling to give any answers and basically hung up. And that conversation unfortunately could not be recorded because Scar's Theater lives in a state where the recording of phone calls must be approved by both parties. So yeah, we only know about this conversation from verbal accounts. Dan supposedly interrupted the call and then wrote an email with a rather ominous tone. He stated that perhaps certain facts about his site and himself had to come to light sooner or later, but whoever learns them will regret it, because they're things you can't simply unsee or undo. Those words further heightened the atmosphere of unease surrounding this case. This is where another key figure enters the story, Alan, who is the son of Dan's partner, and later Dan's wife. Alan has a negative attitude towards Dan and doesn't want to be associated with him at all. In private correspondence with YouTuber Scare Theater, Alan explained that Dan was never his legal parent, though they lived together for a time. Alan didn't hide his negative feelings, saying Dan made his childhood to be a nightmare, as physical and psychological abuse were commonplace. Most importantly for this video, however, Alan revealed that the girl in the mentioned recordings is actually his sister, who suffers from severe health problems and intellectual disability, and the mysterious unfurnished room is her room indeed, which primarily contains only the bed for her own safety. According to this information, Dan had access to a camera installed in the girl's room, and it was used to monitor her for potential epileptic seizures and other health threats. And now the question remains, why were these recordings publicly posted on the internet in a publicly accessible directory? Alan couldn't explain that and wasn't willing to justify it, but he suggested his stepfather might have done it due to his beliefs, his strange theories, and spiritual interpretations. Simply publishing these recordings online, even if they were just a few minutes, into an open directory on the internet, thus making them available to the whole world, seems pretty disturbing and unethical, especially if this girl is sick and is unaware of being recorded and published in such a controversial context. The folder title Orbs might indicate that Dan was looking for orbs in these recordings, light artifacts that some attribute to paranormal phenomena. As you've noticed, Dan had a radical stance on the girl's illness and reportedly did not allow standard treatment options in line with modern medicine. Instead, he spun his own theories, which he enthusiastically described on the site. Over time, thanks to the works of online detectives, other curiosities from Dan's life began to emerge, shedding light into his psychological and, most importantly, religious profile. It turned out that this man had registered numerous other domains in his name, some with an overly religious character, such as OKLDS.com, short for Oklahoma Latter-day Saints. Archives showed that for some time, that site redirected to various other other directories related to autism research or the main Horselaugh site. The most puzzling folder on the oklds.com archive was titled 116 pages. It was impossible to actually access because it hasn't been online for a while, and Internet Archives show that it was never saved since access required some authorization. But here's the thing, anyone interested in different religions may know that the missing 116 pages are a legendary fragment of the Book of Mormon, supposedly translated by the faith's founder Joseph Smith, which was unfortunately lost or destroyed in the 19th century. This fragment is called the Book of Lehi. Various groups of Mormon theology researchers have long speculated on what might have been on those pages. Some believe this missing fragment still exists somewhere. And here comes another astounding claim from Dan. In some archived posts on Mormon forums saved by Reddit users, Dan claimed that he gained possession of these 116 missing pages. According to his statements, he supposedly examined the document and it was supposedly even partially confirmed by some church representatives. But Dan, as he emphasized, had no intention of publishing it at all. At times, he said he feared that if the document turned out to be fake, he would be contributing to spreading heresy and misinformation in his own religion. At other times, he said that if it turned out to be genuine, it would be seized by various nefarious, self-interested individuals who would create a sensation and their own versions of the supposed Book of Lehi. Consequently, no one ever saw these pages that Dan had, and the Mormon community at large considers Dan's claims to be a complete hoax. An even stranger turn of events occurred when it emerged that Dan, a dedicated Mormon and someone who has a lot of controversial opinions, might have had a brief encounter with Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow, the main figures in one of the most tragic and sensational events, criminal cases in the community. Lori and Chad are known for what's called the Doomsday murders, a series of homicides and disappearances that shocked the public in the United States. They were deeply involved in radical beliefs about the impending end of the world and the possession of certain people by dark spirits, which justified, in their view, eliminating those individuals. In the course of the investigation, it was discovered that Lori's missing children had been in fact murdered and buried on Chad's property. This story swept through the US in 2019 and became, in a sense, a symbol of how extreme beliefs and religious delusions sometimes can lead to crime. There is no evidence that Dan was ever involved in these horrific events, but there are reports that at a certain gathering, a Mormon camp in 2017, Dan mentioned the alleged 116 pages and he met Chad and Lori. According to various Reddit users, Chad had urged Dan to reveal the missing pages' contents because he planned to base one of his projects or books on them. Dan, however, refused, seeing Daybell and Vallow as untrustworthy. This appears to be a simple anecdote, typical of environments where one sensational story collides with another, but in the context of the overall aura surrounding Horselaugh.com, ambiguity, a climate of fear, and radical beliefs, it all added a certain intensity to the story. Much of this unfolded from late 2022 to early 2023, when Reddit users began flocking the Horselaugh.com site and saving more peculiar files from it. Dan himself probably noticed the surge in traffic on his site and at some point removed most of the content and blocked the access to other parts of it. So the links started leading nowhere and many folders were empty. This situation mirrors other similar disappearances of odd websites on the internet when their authors realize their controversial materials have drawn unwanted attention. This chain of events, discovery of a site, the public's growing curiosity, attempts to make contact, and ultimately the disappearance of the content is not new to internet sensations. But few cases are as unsettling, especially when it involves the privacy and well-being of a person unable to give information informed consent to having her image published, all wrapped up in conspiracy-laden attempts to prove only God knows what. Apart from the medical issues and videos on Dan's other domains, for example on boycottm.com, one could find various accounts of legal conflicts Dan was involved in the past. One of Dan's sites mentions Dan's war with Oasis, a water dispenser manufacturer, which resulted in the company suing Dan for defamation. The website also referenced boycotts and petitions Dan initiated in, and that was his way of fighting for what he believed were his rights. Looking at it all together, the autism theories, religious radicalism, posting videos of a sleeping girl, court conflicts, contacts with controversial individuals, a portrait emerges of someone prone to extremely one-sided interpretations and utterly unwavering in his conviction that he is right, even if it all contradicts facts or basic ethics. Other sites of his, danjudfamily.com, okdutch.com, and tammychestnut.com contain, in archived form of course, a really interesting text that seemed like a cool trailer of Horselaugh.com. I am working as quickly as possible to correlate my test results. However, I do not expect to complete this before 22nd of April 2016. If you intend to use this data before that date, do so with caution. If you need information sooner, contact me by emailing Dan at this domain. And the internet is now full of various theories about this case. Some seem more plausible, while others seem like messed up conspiracy theories. Some believe Dan is just an old man with a weird quirk and with mental issues, who due to his megalomania and bizarre views, keeps dragging himself and his close ones to new controversies. Others, however, claim there's a bigger side to it, a criminal one, for instance suggesting that he was abusing this girl on these videos, or that he was engaged in really dark religious practices. The facts, however, are that the family confirmed the child's serious health situation. Alan was explaining that she was monitored by camera and that there was some degree of domestic violence, but he also stressed that the girl's primary caregiver is another sister of his, someone genuinely trying to ensure her safety. Internet discussions also raised the matter of legal accountability. Many people wondered if posting videos of a sleeping, disabled girl without her consent she can't consciously give, constitutes a violation of the law. And it's really hard to say whether the relevant US state has regulations that would justify legal intervention. Some users claimed to have reported the case to local child protection services, but at this point it's unknown whether that led to any outcome. Even if the agency inspected the living conditions, perhaps they found nothing blatantly inappropriate or illegal that would justify taking the child away from the family or taking other measures. Amid these discussions, online community became polarized. Some claimed Dan was eccentric but ultimately harmless, a person worthy of pity. Another group, however, viewed him as a danger to himself and his family, citing the mental and physical violence described by Alan and Dan's fanatical beliefs and misinformation. There were arguments over whether it was right to essentially harass Dan, send him various threatening emails, or encourage others to hack into his servers. Many urged other people not to engage in harassment, vigilante actions, or breaking the law, especially since this involves a disabled child. In the absence of clear evidence of criminal activity, amateur investigators and online content creators mostly stuck to documenting the case and encouraging caution. Over time, the interest in Horselaugh.com began to weaken, mostly because Dan stopped uploading new content to the site and basically started to remove all of the old content. The recordings of this sleeping girl, however, are still being copied and re-uploaded all over the web, which in itself seems pretty unethical. Comments arose suggesting people stop spreading the child's image, even in the context of revealing wrongdoing, and focus on reporting the issue to the authorities authorities if they believed there were violations. On the other hand, however, it was precisely the widespread publicity that likely made Dan realize that what he was doing wouldn't go unnoticed, prompting him to limit public access to the content. And what does Alan say about all this? He mentioned that Dan lives with the conviction he can heal people and that one day his disabled daughter will wake up from autism and live a fully normal life. Alan, however, was skeptical. According to him, Dan treated both him and other family members unkindly. He often changed churches and beliefs. One moment he was enthusiastic about one, then had falling out with someone and moved on to another. This lack of spiritual stability went hand in hand with what Alan called Dan's delusions. It took its toll on the entire family. We also must remember that Alan's accounts come from someone who himself admits to having had a tough childhood and carries resentment. This doesn't mean he's lying, of course, but it's wise to consider all contexts and limited perspectives. Looking at the overall picture, though, we can summarize the Horselaugh.com case as follows. Most likely we are dealing with a person who has run his website for years, initially posting family vacation updates and personal blogs, gradually integrating very peculiar pseudo-scientific commentary on autism, mixing it with religious themes, and then, for reasons known only to Dan, he decided to upload this all to a public directory and of course also upload video recordings of his daughter asleep. The entire composition was frightening. An empty room, a strange orbs folder title, someone peeking through the door. Internet users saw something straight out of a horror film and started digging deeper. In the process, more shocking details emerged. The site owner's aggressive reactions, numerous family disputes, the missing 116 pages of the Mormon text, and his contact with controversial people charged with murder. But contrary to what you might expect from crime films and TV shows, the Horselaugh.com affair never got to one spectacular conclusion. No official investigation has surfaced to either uncover something even more horrifying or to clear Dan of any suspicion of something bigger. The internet community, especially groups devoted to internet mysteries, have concluded that the case will likely remain unresolved, or perhaps indefinitely, because the key information is held solely by Dan. Conflicting reports and lack of direct evidence of actual crimes make a definitive conclusion impossible. All that remains is the impression that there is something else here, some sort of a even darker side to it. Only time will tell if we'll ever see the end of this story, or will it just periodically resurface in different creepypastas as an example of a real-life mystery in which it's hard to separate facts from illusion. Take care on the internet. Thank you for watching.